Welcome to today's ITAM Kitchen. Hope every day everyone's doing well and having a great new year. I can't believe we had so much fun on the welcome part yesterday. And Patrick, you said you were attending. You really enjoyed as far as the ITAM Kitchen, right?
Yeah,
The
it was
ITAM
fun.
Kitchen, what's the purpose? Being able to say we have the ability to collaborate and talk about topics and think about things that we do in our world, right? Have that open collaboration.
Yep.
And I'm sorry, I interrupted you there, Patrick. What were you going to say?
No, the fun, getting people together, like-minded people, walking through, day-to-day stuff, talking about different things, bringing up new topics, right? It's always good to have that type of collaboration. So,
Absolutely, absolutely. And there were some great topics submitted yesterday, so I didn't have a chance to get back to the comments yet. But no, they were definitely seen, and we're going to talk about those. I saw one was like, okay, how do you even start a project? It's like,
yeah,
okay, things have already been going through my head because things like that are extremely important, and you don't realize. I mean, I've done lots of proposals. I've did pre-sales roles and helped solution consultant, et cetera. Lots of proposals. To me, it's like a second nature. But that's in my head, right? It doesn't mean that everyone understands how it works and who needs to be involved and whether you start from the beginning of the project, the entire duration, the roadmap, et cetera. Um, it's not common knowledge, and that's the whole idea behind the kitchen is let's talk it, and talk about what pieces are involved, so we can make this presentation not just a presentation, but make this outcome for our program. That's what it
yeah,
makes fun, right? Yeah.
yeah, and it was cool with the chat features and everything like that. There was conversations that were happening on the side related to everything that was being said, but there was additional dialogue that was being managed and worked through, for lack of better terms. So it was really a great session. Enjoyed it, and the fun came through, and some of the passion came through as well.
Well, excellent. That's the whole idea because we want to have fun. And that's one of the things, the whole idea behind the ITM Kitchen. When we first came up with this concept, right, is this has been my entire journey, is I want to bring fun back into ITAM. It's honestly gotten a little monotonous, dry, and it can be, right? We get into spreadsheet mode, but how can we figure out how we can move that next step, right? And that's
Yep.
where the fun is. How can we move it forward? I mean, yeah, you can worry about some of the basics, and people need to understand the basics. I totally get it, right? But this is talking about how do you advance beyond that. We can start with the foundation, but how do you go beyond that? Because once you get done with the basics, which happens pretty quickly, I wouldn't say in 20 minutes, but it happens pretty quickly. You have to worry about those advanced type of dialogue, right? And the question is, how do you put that together? Okay, so I want to make sure I'm chatting on my system. I see a bunch of chats already coming in. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate everyone joining today. Yes. Thank you. Coming in from Texas and Wales. I mean, I love the international influence here on how we're putting this. And our topic for today, I gave a little bit of a teaser yesterday, and Patrick and I have known each other for a while. And by the way, if you want to be a special guest on here, give me a heads up, reach out to me. Actually, I'll put a little nugget out there. Feel free to DM me on LinkedIn. That's probably the easiest way to do it at the moment. But today's topic, and Patrick and I have been talking about this for months, actually. We're talking about it's like how to find that new job and some of the challenges there are to find that new role. Because when you think about those challenges, right? And trust me, I had that phone call last year as well, right? I was doing a bunch of pre-sales activities and solutioning, and I will say I was doing pretty well. And all of a sudden, I get on there with my boss's boss's boss at the same time, and get on the boss, and all of a sudden, HR shows up. HR shows up, and it's like, oh, I thought we were gonna have a different conversation. Now I know the conversation we're about to have. It's like, okay, but I will say at the end of it, I knew the HR person. We were like best friends in 15 minutes. Never met her before. She was great. We kind of had dialogue. We found out, we used to work at HP together back in the days. I'm an old HP software guy myself, as well as Peregrine. And from that, when it's all said and done, I totally shocked him. I said, thank you. They go, what do you mean? I said, I really appreciate the conversation, dialogue. Like, we've really been a good sport about this. Most people are. I said, no, I'm loving it. You go, what do you mean? It's like, I have my own event in 2 weeks. I had the ITAM Summit happening in 2 weeks. And if you haven't seen the ITAM Summit, you'll see it published like in the next week. It's where we actually get together in person and we actually talk about topics about ITAM, the higher level topics. And I said, I have my own event in 2 weeks. You just eliminate any conflicts I was going to have. Thank you. That was the end of the conversation, right? And the HR person says, you already had a plan? You already have a backup? It's like, I always did. This is what I do. This is what I love. Hence, the whole idea behind the ITAM Kitchen is we need to have the fun, bring the fun back into it. And anybody that knows me, and Patrick, you've known me for a while, it's like, am I ever boring? Not usually.
No, not at all. Not at all. No, the situation, chasing this stuff down is always tough, right? It's a part of, and I read the thing that you had put out a couple days ago about just the statistics around that, and it's reality. If you haven't experienced it, and unfortunately I'm currently looking unemployed, open to work. Anybody who looks at my profile knows that. But it's part of it. And where ITAM should be more on the proactive side rather than the reactive side, right? I kind of had this idea that this was going to happen. It was coming. I just didn't, not through lack of effort. It just didn't work out. I just wound up in this spot. But we've got to again, like asset management, we've got to be proactive in our careers, and how we do this stuff.
Well, we do, and we have to look at it from multiple angles, right? Yeah. We have to think about how we're going to evolve ourselves. Because there's one thing working for the man, right? And there's also working for yourself, right? But there's an in-between there as well, right? Especially when you're looking for roles, right? And today's topic's about how do you look for that? Because you always have to keep on, I wouldn't say look for the next role, but you have to find a way to advance and grow. And anyone that doesn't grow in this field, I don't know what you're doing. I'll be honest, because I've done it now for 30 years and it's never boring. And I've heard people say, oh, ITAM's boring. It's like, I don't know where you've been. And you probably see, I think I posted this in the last 6 months. It's like, I don't know where you are, but ITAM's never been boring for me, ever. There's too many different pieces involved. There's
and it's moving, and it's, it's like anything else. We as practitioners, whether we're consultants, working for the man, trying to do it ourselves, whatever the situation may be, we still have to strive to be better, right? I had a conversation, a couple months ago. Maybe to a fault. I know that I don't know everything. I only know what I've known and experienced. There's always something new to be experienced in this space. There's always going to be a new challenge. When I broke into this, it was all about hardware assets. Software was, everybody knew it, but it was down the road. No one really understood what the impact was going to be, 15 years down the road. Compliance was out there, but it wasn't the hardware, right? I got into this because, funny story, I broke into asset management and got into this role because the guy who was managing a support team and doing the IT procurement was literally walking out the back door with servers. And they got wind of it, and this was in the early days of eBay. So they were buying new stuff, and every, one out of every three, one out of every five, whatever the number was disappearing. And someone caught wind of it. I don't even know how they caught it, but next thing you know, I'm walking into this role where it's like, all right, we need to be better tracking our hardware. And it always started out with a conversation between the CTO and the CFO. CTO needs more money. CFO is asking what you do with the money from last year. So here we are, right? That and it continues to evolve. Now those questions are okay. Now, you got your desktops, but now we're going to start thinking about infrastructure stuff and et cetera. And it's continuing to grow. And every single day, no matter what the situation is, there's something new that's going to pop up that's going to make us all better.
There is. Well, so from a quick introduction perspective, for those that don't know me, my name's Bill, and people know me as Mr. Bill ITAM. It's a big comical way about how that started a long time ago. God, that's at
I
least
got
10. That's over
pictures.
10 years ago.
I got
You have
pictures.
pictures. There you go. It was on a beach, but it was not in a, it was what, not with coconuts. Um, but anyways, my name is Mr. Bill. I'm a 30-year practitioner, hardware asset manager, software asset manager, configuration management. I'll just say I was doing it before it was ever cool, about 30 years ago. I got into the solutioning and moving forward. I started in IT, I was an end user engineer, support engineer, and being able to further evolve, right? And from there, being able to say, okay, my boss asked me how to do my job, and there it's like I didn't know, and no, I did that, complete that task, and I became a consultant within a year, and I've now helped thousands of people, including here online, not just during COVID, but just through my entire career. But what I didn't realize was the amount of fun I was about to walk into. And that's the part I can say with ITAM that I've always had. The fun factor's always been there. And that's where Patrick and I actually met, was trying to figure out, okay, how to chat about shop, but figure out, okay, how can we have fun as we do it? Now, Patrick, I want you to introduce yourself first. You talked a little bit about your story, but who are you?
So, Patrick Duffy, I broke in probably right around the same timelines as you. Started somewhere
Mm-hmm.
around 1995, 1997.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Broke in because of the issue that I just spoke to. And out of that relationship, it quickly rolled into supporting. I was working for a company that had a lease business, and the lease partners were losing equipment, and they were spinning off another service. I was helping support, get the hardware acquired, get those teams in place from a technology perspective, and it rolled into a consulting role that has led me to where I'm at. Across multiple industries, helped multiple companies, and have experienced and watched the growth. Right, what's the value add that we have brought? And continue to bring to make the companies better. It's funny because I said 20 plus years ago that I'm going to get into this consulting business and I'm going to be able to write my ticket. Every company is going to realize that they have that they need asset management, and it's a critical component, and everybody's going to be just buying into it, and we're going to get all the support we need. Now we all know that it's not always the case. We all know that that there's been multiple instances, 20 years after my role, where I'm the first real identified asset manager for a company, which is, it's kind of scary to think about, but it's the reality. And here I am. Bill and I have traveled a lot of similar roads, never been in the same place at the same time, other than maybe, a
Conference.
yeah, yeah, exactly, right. Some type of conference or whatever the case may have been, and exchange numbers. I think we've been talking now for 15, 20 years, just staying in touch, and many people along the way. So, but yeah, here we are today, having another conversation about this industry, the changes, and what it's going to take to stay or, develop and grow in it.
Quick question. Are you hearing a big hum or is it just me?
I'm hearing it now that you started talking, and the hum I think is might be on your side. I don't know. Let me check. I can mute myself, see if it goes away.
No, it's me. Let me change something real quick. Hold on a second.
Okay. So yeah, so while Bill's off running, look me up on LinkedIn, reach out. Love to continue to grow my network and relationships, and it's always good to meet somebody new and talk to somebody in the industry.
There's no telling knowing technology. You always have your challenges in different ways. And when you go online, here you go. It's funny. I'll go a little tangent on that as far as challenges you have with technology, right? This broadcast right now, right? We're doing ready, and Patrick, it's like, Patrick, I've been talking. It's like, come on, be a guest, etc. And what was the text you sent me this morning, Patrick?
My internet is gone. It so Google Fiber just rolled through our neighborhood, and when they built my neighborhood, they didn't allow AT&T to use conduit to run lines through, so everything is just buried under the surface. My fiber has been cut 4 times in the last 6 weeks because of all the efforts going on in the neighborhood. And my new line, which was replaced and put in last week, um, the garbage trucks right after yesterday's ITAM Kitchen session, the garbage trucks rolled through the neighborhood and took out my fiber line that was running across the road. So after some arguments with AT&T this morning, someday they'll get this thing fixed. But right now, adapt, be agile. I'm running all of this off of my hotspot on my mobile phone. So, you know, technology is good, technology is bad, but here we are.
Absolutely, absolutely. And as we're thinking about it, if you have anybody that you want to share this with, as far as the stream happening right now, please share it with them. Share it with them live and send it over to them, or send us that. Okay, whether it's LinkedIn or YouTube, and if it's on YouTube, and they can go there too. It's at ITAM Kitchen, so feel free to look at that. Yeah, feel free to share and share the knowledge. That's the whole idea here. How can we share our community and get a little bit more vibrant? And appreciate the kind of chats that are happening right now as far as connecting, help make that happen. That's great. And you're absolutely right. Where I was coming from here is sometimes we have the challenges just to try to communicate, and we have to overcome that. And it's also where I was going with that was when that happened this morning, and I got that text from Patrick. I said, okay, didn't phase me a bit, right? Didn't phase me a bit, because what I have to be on this side is like, okay, I have a guest with a potential struggle. And it's like, I believe my response was, just use your phone, right?
Yeah.
We'll make it work, because we have options in the most important part. And we have to look at this as IT asset manager as well. It's about the changes we have in our life, and role changes and job changes, et cetera, is we have to be the rock. That's what I call it. I started saying that when COVID happened. And it's all said and done, irrelevant what hits us, even in our job, we have to be the rock. It's like, okay, listen to it, see how to respond. And we should not be adding to the drama. We get drama all the time, right?
Yeah. It's when you talk about all that drama, right? There are so many things that go into life, right? Cooler heads prevail was something that I've always been told. I'm a former boat captain, kind of crazy. I don't even know if you know this, Bill, but I drove boats commercially for years, whether it was fishing boats
Interesting.
on Lake
Explains the
Michigan.
head.
Yeah, exactly. Whether it was fishing or just cruise tours on Lake Michigan and the Chicago River. Um, but as that person in charge, you got a lot of other responsibilities. You think asset management stressful? Try driving a boat with 800 people on it. And any type of mechanical failure, right? Things change quickly. It's funny because I had a guy one time. He's like, "What happens if something goes wrong in this boat?" I said, "Sir," I said, "I got 200 feet on either side of this boat." I said, "If something goes wrong, you're going to be off of this boat before you even know something's wrong." I said, "So just don't worry about it. We got it under control." And kind of honestly, that's how I've taken this career. We all talked about the calm exterior with the mouse running like crazy, or the gerbil on the wheel running like a madman in the background. It's kind of what this is. At times, you know, the goal is never to make the gerbil or the mouse stop running. I think it's always to let it be slower. Let them turn the wheel. We have to adapt to that, but let that gerbil let that mouse run a little bit, because honestly, that keeps us on our toes, and that's why it's always interesting.
It does. And it's also important at that moment to say, irrelevant what it is, take it in. Let's take it in. Let's understand why the scenario is happening the way it is. And as IT folks, we don't get trained in this. We don't. We have to learn this on our own, right? But we have to learn as specific in our role, because we have so many people, I'll say, piling on, or requests or demands, et cetera, and the prioritization, wherever you want to take it, right? And we have to say, yeah, all that's happening. And this is all that's going to get done right now.
Yeah.
People are going to
Yeah.
scream at you, right? Yeah.
Well, there's also opportunity in chaos, right? When it happens, we can get better. I'm a huge process guy. I live by process. Asset management process is critical to it all, as well as from the governance side. And if something goes wrong, now it's an opportunity to look to see how we can improve. Let's take a look at the process that was involved here. Let's look at the policy. Do we need to change this? Do we need to do something to get better? Um, that's again, that's how I continue to look at it, and being able to adapt quickly. It might not drive a change immediately, but it's something that has to be considered down the road.
Well, exactly, and it's and one thing we're talking about the role, right? But that's also going back to our core topic, right? As far as when we look for that, when we're looking for the scenarios that okay, you have a layoff or something, right? As far as looking for the next role, I gave my example, and Patrick, you have yours too, because you had a similar type activity over last year. Is even when that happens, right? We have to think about the same way, and we have to internalize that, right?
Yeah.
Because we also have to have the confidence that's like, okay, no, don't get me wrong, being without income, et cetera, that can spaz anybody out. I'm not saying it shouldn't, right? But at the same time, saying this is a sign. This is a sign that I need to go through change, right?
Yeah.
And that's hard to embrace and take in.
Yeah, and it's kind of funny because in where we're at in life right now. I could go out there and show panic and yell and scream on LinkedIn saying, "Hey, the job search is this, the job search is that." The other side of this coin is my two children are now connected to me on LinkedIn. So, in this day and age, there's more visibility into what's going on, than ever before, right? So understanding the audience, understanding who's out there, understanding that, yeah, the change isn't always bad. Is it stressful? Absolutely. Has being laid off? Yeah, it's a big part of that. But sitting down having conversations, Bill, you've more than once talked me off of the ledge, in the last few months. But understanding, there's an opportunity there, and going forward, right? With the topic of what we're talking through here, as far as looking for that next role, looking for that next role. One of the things that makes this search, trying to identify that, is the inconsistencies with job descriptions. How does your skill set, my skill set of always being able to adapt and stay in common situations, that doesn't really translate through a resume, right? So, there's so many different parts to finding that next job and that next role, that um, is hard, and then you layer on the new technology that's out there, and it gets a little bit harder. But I think at the forefront of this is the inconsistencies in what is an IT asset manager, what is a SAM specialist, a ham specialist, who, from a contract perspective, there's so many things that fall under asset management, or can, right? Not necessarily, based on the dynamics of organizations. In my last role, I had all asset management, I had IT support, I had all IT procurement. In previous roles, I had segments of that or pieces of that. But it, from a governance strategic piece, that's always really been a part of that. But when you start to layer on I hate to say, getting into the weeds piece of it, it cloudies it and makes it a little bit harder. You're getting me dizzy with all of these changes, by the way. I get motion sickness. I may have been a boat captain, but man, you pick one, will you, for me? Help me out.
I'm having
There's
fun with
another
it.
one.
Yeah. It's one of those things. Okay, how does the new tech work? Right? We always get
Sure.
curious.
Absolutely.
But you're absolutely right. Because we have to be the stable one once all said and done. Whether we talk about home, the workplace, et cetera, because the number one problem, as far as what we deal with, we talked about this a little bit yesterday. It's not the technology; it's working with people. And when we have the right mindset walking into any conversation, even if, like I said, okay, even when I got laid off, right? It's like I had the mindset I was going to help somebody. Well, the best thing I did for those two individuals, because these are senior managers, right? They were nervous. They were extremely nervous. But it's like, okay, here's the role. And it wasn't lackadaisical. I mean, it was a serious conversation. It was, but we had the fun. It's like, yeah, okay, things happen. And when it's all said and done, they said thank you.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
if you're able to calm that scenario, that's huge, right?
So I've always considered myself an agent of change, right? Especially if I'm walking into an organization where asset management is net new, right? There might have been some type of effort, right? But when it gets formalized, people get challenged. And I remember I learned it really early in my consulting career. It's about you have to make change, but if you can make a change that makes people's lives easier, um, grab that low hanging fruit, take that opportunity to make that to get a quick win, so to speak. It's quick win now, but you know, and all I did is I sat down with a lady and I said, "Hey, what do you do on a day-to-day basis? Let's look at what you're doing."
Yeah.
And I was, and we had just put in a tool. The tool was in. It was okay. It was good for 1996, right? Nothing compared to what we have today. And I said, "Hey," I said, "we got a report for this." I took
Mm-hmm.
12 hours off of her work week to let her go do something else that she was behind on. You know, it's identifying those gaps. Let's make life a little bit easier. Let's get a quick win. A lease report on how old your environment is. Um, you got to have the data. And there's a question in the chat here about, where did it go? Talking about making automation a little bit easier. I think AI is, I think right now AI is on the forefront, but we've been using technology and asset management for a while now. If for example, I sat in a seminar and they were talking about using AI to understand what's being discovered. Well, if you're running discovery and you have it scheduled and everything's out there, isn't that already AI?
Exactly.
I walked away from it saying, you know what, this is already there. You know,
Mm-hmm.
AI has come to the
It's a new
forefront,
name.
but AI has been in place for a little while. We've already been using it, right? Is there an opportunity? Yeah, absolutely. But here's what the one thing when we're talking about discovery, and I've always said this: discovery is great, AI is great if you want to try to figure out what you have. But I've yet to find a tool that can find a device that's in a box sitting on a shelf in a storage room. You st- that's if AI ever fixes that, it's going to fix a whole bunch of problems for us. But we have to understand that it's going to impact us. It's going to help, but I don't foresee it changing the IT asset management landscape to a point where we're all going to be rendered useless. I just don't understand. I don't see that. I'm babbling.
No, no, no. You're dead on. My mind's going several different things, several different ways, which is my mind, right? Um, because you have to think about when it comes to the AI and how we put that in place. Because everyone says, "Oh, you have to have AI in your resume and things like that." That role is it's about that conversation.
Yeah.
So to be able to articulate and say, because keep in mind, I'm an integration guy. I was always the guy integrating asset management with everything else. That's just what I did. I love it. I'm a data geek, right? Data nerd, right? You want to just call it that. I'm one of those crazy ones. But I say crazy one because being able to say, how do you work with others? And that was the automation. I was doing the automation before it was ever cool. I probably had one of the more complex systems, and I put in for a company out of Des Moines, Iowa, 25 years ago. And that worked for years, fully automated.
Yeah.
hardware, software, the counts, etc. And we didn't call it AI. We just put the process place with the workflows and we made it work. So here's your new term, right?
Yeah.
And it's important to say that because your executives are stuck, sometimes are stuck on the AI role or even that the AI term. It's like be able to articulate the way we just talked about. We've been there, we've done it.
Yeah.
Now, if you're new to the industry, totally get it, no problem. Okay, call us old folks. That's right. I'm trying not to get that much gray hair, but yeah,
Yeah.
I'm working on it. Yeah, I'm working on that too.
Post ITAM.
Exactly. So as we're going through it, it's funny how time in these conversations, I love them because all of a sudden we get on a rant and we just start talking, right? I can't believe 30 minutes is already into the call, right?
Yeah, we haven't even really touched the topic that
Yeah,
we were supposed to be talking about in the first place.
We've skirted over, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to looking for the role, there are some challenges and opportunities that we need to be aware of, right? And I'll start off with this. Patrick, remember the first time you called me saying, okay, it happened, the ball was dropped, right? Or yep. you had the conversation, right? And you say, okay, take a couple weeks off, get your head right. But you remember the next conversation that we had about trying to find that next job?
Yeah. Yeah. It's not about the next job, it's about the right job, right? The right fit. You don't trying to find the right place, where you're going to be appreciated, where you're going to be able to use the knowledge and be respected for that, right? You can go in and there's one of two things that happen. You can go in and take a job, to take the job to fill to fill it, to fill that gap. But if you're in 3 months and you're unhappy again, right? Was it worth it? Well, it's hard to say because you never really know what you're walking into. You can ask all the questions you submit the resume, you go through the screening, you get through the door. You don't really know what you're walking into until you get into it, right? But I think from the point that we talked about, understanding and making sure you're asking the right questions during the process will help make that back end life a little bit easier. And you can get into the conversation of, well, what's your managing style, right? I just asked a question before Christmas. What are your where is your program at, and what do you need me to fix? Um, and it created, instead of getting answers, and there were a couple answers, but I think it created more questions than we actually answered in that process. um you know I could have said, oh yeah, I'm an AI guy, and but if you don't have the data to support the AI, then that's not going to work either, right? So you walk in, you got to try to make sure that it's a good fit for you both. There's the financial aspects of it, but there's the mental aspect of it as well. Walking into a situation from day one where you're going to start banging your head on the table, it's not worth it. you know and business drives change as well. So going back to the ability to be agile. I hate to use agile, but it is what it is. The other side of the coin is that when you get in there, being that agent of change, you need to kind of be prepared for what you're going to face, because there's going to be benefit to it. It's going to be met with some resistance, for lack of better terms. Um, but it is what it is. Um, and all you can do is leverage what you know to help them fix what they want to fix, or maybe even educate them on what needs to be fixed at that point. But I think that talking through this, the job descriptions that are out there today, you can go out anywhere, look right now, type in IT asset manager, and you are going to get 4 or 5 completely different descriptions for that role. they may have some keywords in there that mix and match, right? You're always going to see CMDB in there, and I think that's a misnomer as well. Um, but
Might be a separate
it's
session.
yeah, exactly. Um, you know, it's but it's still, like I said earlier, when I got into this, I thought I'd be able to write my ticket, that it was going to be consistency, that everybody's going to have this all together. And honestly, there's still some disconnect in this industry, within this discipline of what it should be or can't be. You and I talked about that job description that I was looking at this morning. Um, they want all the key software asset management pieces, and then on top of it, it says that they want a configuration build specialist. It's, can I do it? Yeah. Am I familiar with how it's got to be done, and et cetera? Yeah, absolutely, I can. But it's a weird job description because it's not directly called out. It's an experience that I have, but um, it's I wouldn't say it's in my top 10 capabilities, truth be told. So got to be careful on how you
Well,
address that.
it is in that conversation that Patrick and I were having this morning about that role. I said, Patrick, you're absolutely qualified for it. And here's why. I've been doing pre-sales for the last 2.5 years on nothing but ServiceNow stuff, proposals, etc. Demos to customers, things like that, for one of the major global service providers out there. And what I learned out of it, right, was, to your point, they talk about configuration of the SAM module in ServiceNow. But here's the secret sauce, just so everybody sees it. I'm going to put it right here and just drop it right in. There's really nothing to configure because your ServiceNow team's going to do all that. They already have a ServiceNow team doing all the configuration. What you're going to do is you're going to help advise and say, here's how I need it to look. I need you guys to do the work. Now, if you hire another consultant to do the hands-on stuff, great. But I'll speak from experience. If you go in thinking that you're going to modify the ServiceNow environment without dealing with their current ServiceNow team, you have another thing coming, right? As far as from an alignment, because no matter what, they're going to control the environment. That doesn't change.
Yeah.
They might give you a dev environment to go play in a little bit, so it's offline, so it's not production, but you're not going to get access to that. Hence, that specific role, Patrick, I think you are the ideal person for that role, right? Because if they're going to play with the tech side, you just need to understand how the tool works so you can do your job, right?
Yeah. It's our job.
Normalization, you want the results.
Yeah. And it's our job, honestly. I spent a few years doing project management work, implementing ServiceNow, since we just called it out, right? So, and I implemented everything. Now, did I do the implementation work? No, but a large part of that project management work is understanding the needs of the business, understanding and driving the requirements gathering, because we as experts, we as the people with the feet on the ground, we know what we need, right? We can all write requirements for what has to happen, and then have that ITSM team or whomever, whatever they're titled, to write that, and then to put it in. Do I have to test it? Absolutely, because it's got to do what I need it to do, right? And it's the typical phases of a project. So it's, I think, something, and there's some comments out there, Bill, that we should probably take a look at. But I think it's from our perspective, we know what we have to do. And to address there was a question out there about, it's sad about the the job specs that are out there. It's absolutely, but I think it's looking at it from an opportunistic perspective, and I think that this is where Bill was going uh, with this session, is we should be able to help contribute to driving what these job specs look like, what these descriptions look like. Um, I had a while back, I think, Bill, I was telling you about this. I had an HR lady call me and she's like, "You built your resume off of my job description." And it was funny because I responded back to her very quickly saying, "Well, it looks like you built your job description off of my resume." And she was like, "What does that mean?" And I'm still looking for that job description, by the way, Bill. Um, but I said to I she said, "What is that supposed to mean?" I said, "This might be the most accurate job description for what I do that I've ever seen." And I said, "The problem with the industry is that people don't understand that. No offense to the HR folks who are writing these things, and maybe it's a little bit of a loss or a miss on the folks who are hiring and responsible for these type of positions because they may not exactly know what they're looking for, right? We as the experts, honestly, know it better than anybody else, but we may sometimes we're just not in the position to make the hiring decisions on this. I rewrote in two of my recent roles. I rewrote my job description um, to be based on what I was doing and how it had to be done. And that was to the credit of HR. HR asked me to do that because they knew they had it wrong. So, you know, there's a lot out there there's a lot of growth that still has to be done out there.
There is, and some of the clarity. So look for the next couple of days. I actually have a couple articles I've written on this. So in the next couple of days, you'll see some things. I'm open for people's comments when I put that out. I don't have it out quite yet. We'll just have been busy on several fronts, including doing this. But I want to hit those job descriptions as well as get your feedback and insight when that's ready. So we'll probably I plan to do an ITAM Kitchen pretty much daily except for the weekends, for until the end of the month, just so we can kind of get things going here. Uh, don't have a little bit more cadence. But with that, from a job description, et cetera, open for insights on that, right? For example, let's see one thing. Deanna was came up and talking about the CMDB and how the CMDB gets mixed into the roles. Totally get it, right? And I think was, oh my gosh, again, that can be a whole separate session on that. We can go for hours, if not days, on that, right?
Let's be clear,
Yeah,
we have.
exactly. Yes, that's true.
You and I
That's
have
true.
had one-on-ones about that very topic. So,
Yeah. But that's also what makes it vibrant, makes it fun, makes it alignment, because it's about being able to capture that and say, okay, how do we look at this? I mean, I know folks at ServiceNow. I understand what they're trying to do, and I understand where the confusion is. I understand the technology and where it's confused too, but that's a whole separate part. That just means I know too much about the tech. Um, but it's being able to say, okay, how can we do our job effectively? That again, that was back to okay, how are we looking at a role? How to go to the next step? How do we look at the next technology? Right? Because when we start looking at that role, and I don't have it right here at my fingertips, it will also be published. But I did do this like back in August. Had an entire framework talking about it was a strategy framework, how is a strategy to find your next job and your next role. Because it's also what Patrick was just talking about. It's important to work on what you're really proficient at. Don't worry about everything. The job descriptions have everything. Well, the reason why they're everything is because they don't know what they're looking for. and if you don't have a proficiency, I mean, I have proficiency in a lot of things, as does Patrick, but we're similar, but we're different, right? Just because it's who we now are and how our skills work. I mean, I came up the service provider path. That's what it was. And Patrick, you did something similar, but you came up kind of the leasing and then going down that path,
yeah, so
consulting. Right?
yeah, I broke in on the consulting side because we were supporting lease customers, right? So we had a tool. This is going back to 1995. The company was Comdisco, no longer exists, but they had a nice little tool that they were using. And again, for the time, it was great. Nothing against, nothing what we have today available to us, but nonetheless. And then I started it. So it was like practitioner consultant for 3 years. And then I wound up on the practitioner side for a while. And it's been back and forth that way. So, I've sat on both sides of the aisle. Um,
Mhm. Yep.
and it's just the path that, even it was kind of funny. I actually took a step back away from it, ITAM for a little bit, as a project manager and wound up running asset management programs. So it, you know, it's just where I'm at, you know. Um, but yeah, it's a path, right? And we see all kinds of different things. And I was looking for a question here because someone asked about what's appropriate to put in your resume about what we've done and what isn't.
Oh, that's a good
Um,
question. That's a good question.
without being specific, right? We could talk about anything we've done. I could say that I manage Microsoft licensing. That's not going to it's a skill set. It's not getting into the details of the contract or anything industry, sacred or corporate sacred. You know, um, I'd like to know, I can't seem to find it right now, but whoever asked that question, is there something specific that, a skill set that is in question? But everything that shows up on my resume, if I've done it, I'm going to document it somewhere. Again, without specifics, it's going to be the 20,000-foot level rather than the 5,000-foot level.
Well, the other thing to keep in mind, because I mean, you look at my resume, I'm probably about 4 to 5 pages. And people say, okay, you have to be within one. And I say, it won't happen. They go, really? It's like, seriously, it won't happen. And it's not, and they say, well, you're being arrogant about it. It's like, no, I'm being direct. It can't happen, right?
Yeah.
If you want to do it, great for it, great. But for me, honestly, you need the context in there. Otherwise, it doesn't provide the output. Now, keep in mind, my resume, just want to provide for the clarity, and I can speak to this with passion, right? Is there's a short paragraph with some bullet points of what the major outcomes were with that role. Whether I was a worldwide lead at HP doing at HP Software, which I was doing hardware and software asset management. I did all ITAM, I did SAM, as well as I worked with the integration to the CMDB. That was my role, right? And I traveled around the world and helped customers and helped them roadmap, et cetera. That's what I did. So I have major points like that in there. Can I say, oh, I was in these development conversations? Do I document that with my resume? I was talking with Israel all the time on these HP rooms so we could design the new stuff. I don't put that in there.
Right.
Why? That's a conversation piece. That's not something you put in there. But it also depends upon the context of who I'm speaking to, right? Because some of those conversations aren't relevant, right? From a project perspective, they really don't care. Right? They just want to know that you've done the work, you're able to work through challenges. For example, if you were talking about, okay, be a real implementer, right? And from an implementer perspective, think about how you've done your role. Think about the outcomes, the major outcomes you've done it, and what technologies you helped them pursue and excel in. That's what you want to put in the resume. Because those are the highlights. You always put the highlights in there. You don't put everything, right?
Yeah.
On the backside, you can throw some technology. I mean, I could say I used to do TallyNet Census for those that know about that. That is one of the original inventory tools. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Patrick laughs, but it was an awesome tool, and I wish we still had it to even today to a degree. I'd love it compared to some of the stuff we deal with.
That's funny.
It goes back. Oh, I have lots of stories about that too. Yeah, it was a Bill and Hillary comment. Yeah, and actually I went on site with a customer, and her name was Hillary, and I was Bill. So, and she was the vendor. So forever we had that, and that was during the Bill Clinton era here in the States. Yeah, so lots of stories, but my point is put the highlights there within the resume, and when it gets past, I'll say 3 or 4 major organizations you work for, put a line item. Line item, I was here, because again, I'm on 30 years, right? Patrick, the same way. There's
Yeah.
only so much I can do it for. I can make it like 50 pages if I want to, but it's not
Well,
doing it, right? Yeah,
and it's about the successes,
yeah,
and documenting those folks. You know, documenting successes leading will, I hate to say this, but based on the successes that you've documented, you're going to be able to translate what was done to get there,
yeah.
right? You know, real quick, knocking down the delivery SLA for new hardware from 2 weeks to a week, right? That's a success that organizations are looking for, right? Now, just because I did it at organization one doesn't mean I can do it at organization two. There are just some times where that 2 week SLA has to be that 2 week SLA, and that's corporate red tape that I'm going to try to contribute and change, but I might not be able to. The organizations are the organizations. There are just some things that direct and drive and impact other things, right? My job, as I've always
Absolutely.
seen it, my job has always been to take what I got, give the best that I can, and then let's improve on it. I didn't get that impact, that SLA change in 2 days. It took me probably 6, 8 months to get there, but we got there, right? Those are the types of things. So when you're looking at a resume and you're putting out your documentation, I'm all for, and my resume reflects this. If I've done it and there was a positive impact to the organization, I'm using it. I don't need to provide detail, but if I save $2.5 million over the course of 3 years because I was better able to manage hardware leases, then yeah, I have the right to document something like that.
Absolutely. It's honestly a gut feeling as well, right? So, for example, there's stories I don't have, stories and examples in my resume I don't have in there. I just say, okay, for example, I've had my own consulting company, right? So I have my own consulting company, work for different agencies, et cetera. But do I list exactly what I did there? I don't. And I'll use an
Yep.
example. So there was one time I was on my own, right? And again, I'm not trying to tout anything over anybody else here, but I was put in to actually fix a seam to be and bring a seam to be online. And they took a risk, but the risk was they knew I knew asset management really well. They knew I understood the seam to be, and their vendor in 3 years said they tried 3 times to bring it online. They couldn't do it. It's like, I need somebody to actually do it. It's like, okay, fine, let's do it. They go, really? It's like, yeah, we'll make it happen. Now, within 18 months, we had something happen. And it was really successful. We had to do it all manually to the
Yeah.
point that this is kind of how I learned it, right? I had to teach, there was 2 outsourcers plus a contractor, and I was a contractor actually for this financial company. It was global. I had to teach my ServiceNow consultant how to work inside of CMDB, even though he was supposed to be the expert.
Yeah.
I had to teach him how to do it so he could actually apply it. He had more rights to the system inside ServiceNow than I did to make any modifications.
Yeah.
But I say that because I don't put those stories in there. I don't put all that. I'll use the minutia in that, or even the story at all. That's a commentary for the conversation when we have the interview.
Yeah.
Now, maybe I
Absolutely.
shortchanged myself for that, but it's as I just said, it's a very powerful outcome. It was and we made it work. They gave me 3 months to get the initial part up. Because it was October, and they said I want this team to be online by Christmas. I had 5 different CIOs I was reporting to.
Well,
But I say that because, and I told them, I said, it's not full deployment's not going to happen. They said, why? It's like, because it's not possible. I said, I will do what I can within that time frame. Hold my feet to the fire. I'm totally cool with it. You'll have something. And literally, we deployed it New Year or Christmas Eve of that year. I said, I mean, I literally had folks in India on Christmas Day there. They were bringing on the CMDB, and
yeah,
but it was a commitment that they made. But there you
and
go, right?
and in today's day and age, right? The statements of what you've done in your roles, right, is critical. Don't get me wrong there, but in this new age of the HR bots with keywords, right? That you roll in a keyword addressing what you've done, and you're covering it as well. It's when those keyword searches are taking place, they're just looking for those two pieces, and if you've got it, then that's great. Then you can um, further expound during the conversations with them. You get to that, then that keyword is actually opening a door to that conversation, and you could just you could just in the past, this is something that this experience isn't directly addressed on my resume, but this is where it was. This is what I did. And if you want to, you could say that I'm too old and my resumes are 5 pages long, and your system doesn't accept 5 pages, and this is why I had to do it. Right? It's the way that this process works today is very, very different than it was even 5 years ago now. And there's ways to navigate and covering your expertise without adding a whole nother page to your resume. I get is at the core of this, because we've all had it. I mean, like you said, my resume is 4.5 pages. If I included every single thing that I've done in every place that I've been, it's going to start looking like War and Peace. I can't have that. Because
Exactly.
these websites, you can only post a resume of certain size. So,
Yep.
you know, and even if you have direct connections in, I networked into a role, and and then the guy was like, hey, they want you to knock this down a little bit because your resume is too big. So even following the internal process of getting reference and stuff like that has that impact. So and this is stuff learning every single day, because quite honestly, in my current situation, I'm learning new stuff every single day about how this has to happen. And the processes, and again, even networking directly into it, or finding a job posting, or doing a combination of both of those. Um, there's something new that pops up every day.
Absolutely. So on that, as we wrap things up, first, I'm going to put you on the spot here, Patrick. So question, are you
Shocker.
available tomorrow? Same time?
Yeah, probably. I'll have to look,
Okay.
but
So
I'll
let's
get
work
back
through
to
it.
you on that one. Yeah.
Okay, that's cool. So what I want to do is I want to continue this conversation, because we literally just we didn't skirt around it, but we just hit the beginning of this real topic, and that's really where we want to go next. It's like, let's understand how we can make ourselves visible in who we talk to, because this whole job part, not just finding the right role, and tomorrow I'll have something we can talk to on that as well, but
Okay.
also how do we work through and navigate through that? Because with Patrick and myself actually included, it's like finding that next role is not easy in today's HR. I'll use the way chaos, minutia, and AI is a big piece of that. And I think we actually need to drill into that a little bit further to actually help our audience as a whole. And that was kind of the core crux behind the topic. Again, we had lots of different topics, et cetera, which it doesn't surprise me, because you're talking to a real good friend of mine here, right? I have friends all over the place. And when we get started, we'll go for hours. That's
Oh
no
my
joke.
gosh.
Heaven forbid us actually be in person, which we've done before, because then we'll just say we close down the bar is the best way to put it. And it's not about drinking all night either.
Sometimes it leads to more. Let's be truthful about that. So, quite honestly.
But no, it's so for today, Patrick, and hopefully we can continue on. I'll have something tomorrow, so even if you can't make it, I'll have something that we can do and still continue on some of the discussion, because I think finding that next role is extremely critical, because I've seen hundreds of people now lose their jobs in ITAM because of roles, AI, and all sorts of different reasons. And it's important. It's very important. And I started going on this ramp back in October, or now in August. So whatever I can do to help with that, that's another thing behind the ITAM Kitchen. What's the recipe for success? And this time it's our own career success, right? And go that next step.
Yeah,
And put
absolutely.
So from a closing perspective, gosh, it's amazing how time flies. But again, we know that when we get on conversation, doesn't it?
Always.
Any comments there, Patrick?
No, I appreciate it. It was a good session. And as always, looking at the chats, there's even more stuff. It continues to bubble, right? But yeah, the job search, the resume, and those pieces, I've always written that, and we could take this. I just looked at the calendar. I'm good tomorrow. We can make something work tomorrow.
Good. Oh my God.
So, but it is what it is. We have to adapt. There's no question. And we have to adapt both professionally as asset managers while we're working internally, and we have to adapt outside of that to, grow, mature in this space, because it's always going to change. It's always going to change.
And within the methodology I'll show tomorrow, and I'll walk through it with everybody. Somehow we'll get it all worked out. Lots of things going through my mind. The strategy is also, when you focus on what you're really good at, don't try to do everything. focus on what you're really good at and promote yourself in that area. And if they say, well, you need all these other roles, and they say, we're not going to choose you, that's okay. I'll do that in closing. It's okay not to get that role because they may not know what they're looking for.
Odds are they don't know what they're looking for. I hate to say it.
So what is, so if they don't know what they're looking for, maybe you can help them. And as you help them, then you get more credibility in that conversation.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's going to wrap us for today's ITAM Kitchen. Any recipes we want to share today, Patrick? I will find a recipe and put it out there.
No, but after selling point on the green egg, I want a green egg now from yesterday.
Oh, there you go. Okay, we can talk about green eggs. I'll put a recipe out there. It'll be more than a grilled cheese sandwich. Okay. This is kind of like putting a grilled cheese sandwich. You just have to figure out what we want for the middle of it. For me, it's going to be a grilled cheese. I got to put some ham in there, probably a little bit of mayo if I want to have fun with it. Probably some bell peppers. That's
all you need is bacon and a tomato. You're fine on if you want to.
There you go.
Throw some bacon on it and a tomato, and everything is good. So.
Oh, well, thanks everyone for joining. Please share this
with everybody
and share this stream with everybody else. Patrick, stay on, and we will follow back up tomorrow at the same bat time, same bat channel. I will have that stream, and I'll put that up very shortly. You'll see that in a few moments. Thanks, everybody. Have yourself a great day. I think what day